All right. All right. Take a look, folks. Take a look. This is the S&P 500 index since January 1980. Okay. Now, one of the problems with investing in international stocks, international funds, if you don't have direct access, especially, good example would be China. Now, I'm not going to talk about the absurdity of actually thinking that you're really investing without any type of risk when you're talking about a communist country. I'm not going to get into that discussion. It's obviously quite hilarious. And of course, you've never heard anybody in the world even mention that. Why is that? Well, of course, because first of all, you've got stupid people. In this world, you've got the kingpin cons and the followers, the minions, right? The lemmings. So you got the guys, the experts. The media tells you who the experts are. Peter Schiff and Harry Dent and Ray Dalio, right? They're not going to tell you what I just told you. Okay. And of course, the lemmings, they're too stupid to know what I just told you. So I guess I'm the only person in the world that's telling the goddamn truth. Okay? And that is, of course, it really doesn't even make the most basic sense if you're talking about a stock market out of a communist country, right? Think about it. Communism means you cannot own property. You understand that, right? The means of production is owned by the people in totality. All of the people own the means of production. You cannot, on your own, own a business. You cannot own any property. That's communism. Think about what a stock market is. Stock market is a public exchange selling shares of businesses. You understand how that doesn't even make sense for a stock market to exist in a communist country. How come you've never heard that before? How come all these years you've never heard that before? Think about that for a second. Think about that. And when you think about that, and you think about the answer, then you're going to start to realize maybe you're not being told a lot of things that you really need to know. Maybe you're being fooled. Maybe there's a lot more things you're being fooled about. And then take a look at who I am, my track record, what I've done. Okay, take a look at all the things I've exposed that no one else has done or done it before anybody else. Okay, and then you see why I've been banned. Okay. Now, the way the game is played, though, is that if everybody is ignorant and everyone is, everyone's tossing money into the pool and there's an illusion going on and there's no risk at all, or at least any measurable risk that you can see, then you can go ahead and play that game. Namely, if China pretends to be opening up from communism, and they pretend to be playing the whole game, and everyone agrees and everyone's putting money into it, okay, fine. Enjoy it while it lasts, right? But the reality is that under the surface, you haven't changed the fundamentals. I actually talked about this topic to some degree many years ago, early on when I launched my research firm. I talked about this in I first mentioned it in 2010. In that time, I focused on Brazil. And I talked about how in Brazil, for instance, the government owns a large majority of many of the major companies. Okay. And then later on, I talked about China. And then I also started to focus on I don't know exactly, but I know for certain I did a video in 2015 on China. And I talked about the shell company situation where you didn't really own anything. It's always a risk you got to be careful about. And of course, I talked many times thereafter about that. And I even talked about Alibaba. And the videos are posted on this channel from a long time ago where I talked about it. So I was well aware of these risks early on. So I'm not even going to talk about that today because it really kind of, blows the lid off of all this stuff, right? It's too devastating, you see. It's too devastating for some people to handle. Let's just talk about something a little more benign, yet quite relevant. And that is international stocks. International stocks minus, say, communism, the communist element, minus the totalitarian element. And let me just tell you, many of the countries in the world that are outside of the West has its problems for sure, but many of the countries outside of the world, let's say outside of the West, and outside of the Western, let's say, mentorship or guidance. In other words, For instance, when I'm talking about mentorship, Western guidance, I'm including countries like Japan, South Korea, Taiwan, right? So countries outside of the West and countries outside of the countries that are under Western mentorship or guidance, many of those countries are banana republics. They're totalitarianism governments. They're communist governments. They're not real democracies. That's just a fact. Okay, that's just a fact. They call themselves democracies, but they're really not. And so, of course, America's not perfect. I think America's democracy is a joke. You only can appreciate it if you actually take a close look at some of these banana republics. You say you have to compare it. But in an absolute sense, it's a joke. I'm not going to get into that, but the point I'm trying to make is you need democracy. You need democratic principles to have a valid, credible stock market. Why? Because you have to have certain standards of transparency, of rule of law, of accountability. You understand? These basic things that most of you take for granted because you live in the Western world. You don't know any better. You see, if you don't have those measures in place, you can't have a legitimate stock market. So that addresses the area of outright corruption, fraud that you're dealing with in many of these countries that have their own stock markets. That's a big issue right there. Now, of course, we know that the U.S. market is not without fraud or corruption. But once again, once you take a close look at other countries, then you realize just how good people have it in the U.S. And that's why, of course, the U.S. market, one reason why anyway, is the best market, most transparent. It's where all investors want to be, right? So that's one element. Of course, I've talked about some of the other elements. The bottom line, with just generally speaking, with emerging markets, right? Emerging economies, they're very volatile. One reason why they're volatile is because of the relatively lax rule of law, the problems that they have, right? That's one reason. There's a lot of corruption. Okay. So if they're volatile, what does that mean? It means they go through booms and busts, right? You've got, take a look at Argentina. It's been through a period now, I guess it's about going on 15 years of just complete disaster, right? Complete disaster, hyperinflation. They've defaulted on their debt. Gosh, I don't even follow them, but I think it's been 4 times now. IMF loan after IMF loan, right? And then you can take a look at, and of course, Latin America, when you want to talk hyperinflation, the joke that I always like to tell is at any given point in time, there's some country in Latin America that's undergoing hyperinflation. And that joke is really not that, it's not that far from reality, actually, right? Hyperinflation is a very common theme and historically has been in Latin America. Okay. Whether it's the severe hyperinflation of Brazil in the 90s or the very severe hyperinflation of Venezuela, and then Argentina, right? And of course, when you talk about Banana Republic, where do you think that comes from? I don't know about maybe per se Latin America, but certainly some of those, islands, those Caribbean islands, and and then you talk about some of these countries in Asia, right? Emerging markets are volatile, and that means there's times to be in them and times to be out of them. Generally speaking, not always, but just generally speaking, if you're blindly buying an emerging market fund, or you're buying a basket of stocks, emerging market stocks, and you're holding it, buying and holding it, you should not have high expectations. Okay? As you can imagine, you would like to navigate out of the catastrophes that are inevitable for most of these emerging market countries, right? And of course, a great example right now is China, right? China. Let's take a look and see now. Of course, I know China. I've been researching China now for the better part of 20 years. Not many people have been researching China for that long, other than maybe specialists in China. And so I've covered of course, you can't access the Chinese markets directly. So you can either go through the Hong Kong market, the Hang Seng, for the H shares, or you can get an ETF that has H shares, large cap, FXI. That's one of the most common ones. iShares. That's one that I cover. And over the years, I have been forecasting this quite successfully, actually, based upon my economic analysis of China and other things, right? Been quite successful in this. But let me go ahead and show you something here. So this is, I think, the 50 largest large cap H share Chinese stocks. This, for example, probably it changes depending upon, the market cap, but oftentimes Alibaba is the number one stock on this, on the holdings. Alibaba, Tencent. So this is one I'm very familiar with. Let me show you here. And so actually I recommended buying this in my book, Chinese Stocks, right here. So you got this run up before the, of course you got the financial crisis, which I predicted. Huge run up. This is the time to be in Chinese stocks. Okay. After that, became a little bumpier ride. Now we didn't know that. Nobody knew that it would be that bumpy. Let's go ahead and take it here. Let me show you something here. So you can imagine, well, let's go 5-year chart. That's why you have to manage things, because you don't know where things are going to end up. So you can see financial crisis, collapse, recovery, but never close to that peak in 2007. But you can see it stayed in a trading range for quite some time. Actually, several trading ranges. Higher, middle, lower. Okay. It was great to trade it. And of course, all throughout this period, I can sit here and tell you most of the major events that were going on that accounted for these major moves, because I remember them. For instance, you had some housing problems in the housing market here, 2011. Then you had some issues with their currency through this period, 14, 15. And then you had the run-up to the anticipation of the inclusion of the Chinese A shares into the MSCI Emerging Markets Index, which didn't happen. Collapse. Okay. Then you had it happen 2018, what's that? Trump comes out, starts slamming China with trade. Okay. This was kind of the beginning of the end here. This was kind of the emergency brake needs to go on now. And then, of course, we had the delisting of certain Chinese companies that were regarded as national security threats due to their ties to Chinese military. Right. And then, after most of you all don't know about that, you all think about the delisting threat as the failure to comply with the Accounting Oversight Board from the SEC. There's also the through the national security, they can basically delist any security that they want. The U.S. can. They can claim it's a national security threat. Then, of course, you had the coronavirus. China continued that their lockdowns collapse, destroying their economy, and there you have it right here. You see that? Then you had this recent economic stimulus, which is kind of sad and a joke. Their stimulus, it's inefficient. It's so insufficient. It's temporary bump. It's all it's so monetary, not much fiscal. It's not going to solve much. But you see, they've only passed that stimulus because they're trying to meet their target. I wonder how many lurkers are here. What kind of lurkers we got here? Right? Who are the lurkers? I actually just gave a webinar, a research webinar, and I'm about 70% right now. Wonder what the research, the lurkers here, going to steal my information, right? And hide it for their little Patreon group. Probably Tom Nash is here. I know he watches my videos because he tries to learn. Because he's a clueless fucking fraud. So, in fact, this is one thing that I mentioned. I said, listen, you wait for an announcement by this Chinese government. You hear that announcement, you jump all over FXI. It's going to soar. But you don't hold it. It ain't going to last. That's the theme. That's kind of how they operate. But you see, they basically want to put out a stimulus not to really fix things. All they care about is achieving their GDP target, which they're not going to. I'm sure they'll announce that they achieved their 5%, but that'll be a lie, of course. It'll be a lie. See, because what a lot of people don't realize is the communist government, communism, they obtain their power, or they should say they maintain their power. They justify their power through economic gains. So if they don't perform economically, there's a problem. And this is why China has been lying about their economic data for a very long time. And that's why they're going to lie about it this year like they did last year. You see? So think about this for a second. Let's go back now. I knew when to get into China and when to be active and trade it, and I certainly didn't get stuck holding the bag, right? I managed the position based upon what was going on in China, based upon what I knew what was happening. Great times early on, catastrophic times now, right? So think about it for a second. What if you bought and hold FXI? You're fucked. It goes nowhere. Look at that. 20-year period, nothing. Nothing. Right? And if you bought it high, you're fucked. You're going to wait and wait and wait. It's kind of like gold. It's kind of like buying gold, right? You buy it at the wrong time, you can be fucked for a long time. It's a great example of, just generally speaking, why emerging market funds, emerging markets aren't so good. They're not good for buy and hold. You got to know when to hold them and when to fold them, right? When to be in and when to be out. In contrast, if you're in the U.S. markets, right? Yeah, you can do better if you're forecasting, you're more active. But the bottom line is you don't have to do anything. You see that? You don't have to do anything. Okay. Nothing. Why? Well, take a look at America. Now, you have other Western economies as well that do pretty well. They're patched into America, right? They have rule of law. They have democratic system, checks and balances, accountability, transparency, right? The stock market in Australia does well. The stock markets generally in Europe do well. Canada, right? And as I mentioned, the countries that are being mentored or guided by America, they're outside of the West, like Japan, South Korea, right? Japan, of course, they have their own issue. I mean, they're dealing with, they're still licking the wounds from their colossal bubble from the 80s, right? And even India, which is obviously, being courted by America to a large degree, is doing quite well, right? But generally speaking, emerging market stocks, emerging market funds, you don't buy and hold them. And in general, you really should just stay away from them if you don't really know what you're doing. All you need is the S&P. If you want international exposure, once again, the S&P has it. Okay? The S&P has it. You've got the biggest, best brands from the S&P that are located all over the world. That's the international exposure that you get. That's the international exposure that you need. You see? However, let me just mention, see, the secret is that the emerging markets aren't going to do as well, and they haven't done as well as they did in the past, generally speaking. Why? Because ever since quantitative easing, there's a different ball game going on now, and it's even more definitive now because of what's going on. The pushback on globalization. You see, globalization was a complete sellout. This is why you don't hear the truth, which is what I wrote about in America's Financial Apocalypse in 2006, why I was banned. They don't want people to know the truth about the sellout by these corporations that you empower. All these corporations that you're buying their products from, they're fucking you. They don't care about you. You built them. They were nothing until you built them up. And now that they're huge, right? They tell you that they're global. And they're sending your jobs to other countries because now they're global. But guess what? You built them. Your loyalty as a consumer built these companies. U.S. tax base built these companies. And they're sending your jobs overseas. They've been doing this for a long time. And the politicians allowed them to do it. Why do you think these countries are emerging? They're emerging due to American taxpayers, American wages and benefits that are empowering these countries. That's what's going on. Much of China 30, 35, 40 years ago, they were living in caves, in jungles. I mean, take a look at the median income. They were impoverished. How do you think they grew their median income over the past 30 years by, 25-fold or what have you? How do you think they did that? Through Chinese ingenuity? Through Chinese innovation? No, it's because Microsoft, Apple, IBM, all these companies sent their jobs to China. You see? Ford, GM, you understand. And they stole the intellectual property, and they built their own facilities, competing facilities. This is the reality of trade. I wrote about this. It's transfer of technology. It's It's a known fact that you're going to have a technology transfer. Anytime you outsource, as much as you guard your technology, you're going to have a transfer in some way, shape, or form. You would not have any of these industries in China without America, followed by Europe many years later. They've absolutely copied. And then we're not even talking about the decades upon decades of students from China going to America and Europe to study, especially science. And I know this quite intimately because I was in the chemistry lab, I was in the physics lab, and I saw nothing but Chinese graduate students and postdocs around me. And I was thinking even back then, before I even knew what the hell an interest rate was, I knew nothing about any of this stuff. I was thinking, this doesn't seem right. These people are from a communist country. They're taking our knowledge and they're going to go back home. You see? This is the reality that you're never going to hear about, by the way, with China. Ask yourself if you've ever heard anyone talk about this stuff. And then ask yourself, why aren't they talking about this? Is it because it's not true? Is that why? I challenge you. All right? It is true. It's 1,000,000% true. It's a fact. Okay? And the way I see it, every single politician in Washington from the past 35 years should be tried and convicted of treason for allowing this to happen, for allowing corporate America to send jobs overseas. Okay. I mean, but of course, people in America are so fucking brainwashed by their media. They really don't know anything about what's going on. And then when they want to find out, they tune into who? The dipshits, the gatekeepers, the low IQ airheads, Joe Rogan, Alex Jones, Tucker Carlson, right? And they still can't afford health care. No one wants to talk about health care. Think about this for a second. And of course, I'm an expert on health care, not because I wrote a book on it, but because I've worked in the industry. I know a lot about it. And venture capital, telemedicine, okay? But you're not going to hear this. It's a simple fact. Think about this for a second. See, people don't even know how the whole thing operates. Let me explain something. It's quite simple. Americans, I'm going to give you some facts. Americans pay more than anyone else in any country for prescription drugs. We pay a lot more than people in other countries. A lot more. You can't even believe how much more. Okay? That's fact number one. Fact number two, Americans buy the most prescription drugs. Over 4 billion prescriptions per year in America. So you'd think maybe we get a volume discount, but we don't. We don't. Okay? Fact number three, most of the innovation in scientific research, especially scientific research, behind the prescription drugs is from American universities. And guess what that means? Most of that is funded by U.S. taxpayers. So think about that for a second. First of all, U.S. taxpayers are subsidizing the profits of pharmaceutical companies. Second of all, U.S. taxpayers don't even get a discount. They don't even get to pay as much as a person in Europe for prescription drugs. They're paying a lot more. But they're the one that's actually responsible financially for most of those drugs. Think about that for a second. How come people don't know this? Because the politicians aren't going to raise this fact. That's just one element. That's just one aspect of America's healthcare scam. Okay? Americans have been lied to for decades, and they're so fucking stupid. That's why a person like me is dangerous to these elite scumbags. You know, it's funny. I saw just yesterday, I came across something by accident. It's funny. These, let me show you actually. Climate change activists, right? What was it? What was it? Messi. Yeah, Messi's mansion. There's all these things they've been doing, right? Vandalizing the property of rich people. Vandalizing one of the Walton families, their $300 million yacht, right? And it's funny because, I mean, you know, I think it's funny. Why? Because who do you think is behind this whole climate change movement? It's these elite people. And they're so stupid, they got these guys against them. They got these cult people, right? They're actually attacking them. And it kind of reminds me, there's a whole spree going on right now. There's a lot going on, and I hope much more goes on. And look at this supplement scam, collagen. What a fucking scam. Ancient nutrition. Yeah, okay. So it's funny because it reminds me of Occupy Wall Street a little bit, although the people behind Occupy Wall Street, many of them, they understood what was going on. You see, they understood what was going on. And these guys, by the way, these so-called athletes, they're just corporate mouthpieces. They're fucking scumbags. That's all they're just fucking walking advertisements is all they are. You see. I don't respect any of them. I think that they're trash. They're garbage. They're sellouts. They're whores. But, of course, you know, there's no imminent danger to the human population because of, quote, man-made climate change. That's all a lie. There's no doubt about that. But it's funny because, you know, these climate activists, and of course you may have heard, some of them also went to museums and trashed Van Gogh paintings. But it's funny because they're doing the right thing for the wrong reason. The right thing for the wrong reason. They're doing it because they think that the rich are, you know, the rich are responsible for most of the fossil fuel combustion, or, you know, okay, whatever. And I say it reminds me of Occupy Wall Street because, you know, it's funny because, you know, we've regressed over time. You know, back nearly 15 years ago, 14 years ago, Occupy Wall Street movement became kind of the global Occupy movement before it was subverted by, you know, people that represented elements of Wall Street, kind of those types of people. That's what happened to it. Back then, of course, it was a peaceful demonstration, but people were vocal about things. And they talked about the wealth and income disparity, which, of course, I identified in my book, talked about it, wrote about it extensively before it was obvious. And, of course, all these brilliant economic experts wrote about it after the financial crisis, and they get celebrated. It's pretty easy to identify something after it's fucking in your face. Talk about the person that identifies it when it's not obvious, right? But anyway, the point is that the problem in the world today, and of course capitalism is in crisis, I've talked about that for years, is that these rich people, they're the problem. They're the fucking problem. We're talking about the stock market here, right? And one of the reasons why, by the way, the U.S. market is the best market to be in is because it's the most investor-friendly market. Think about that. It's the most investor-friendly. And I'll get back to the discussion I was having here shortly, but this is a nice segue into that because we don't want to lose sight of the main point. The U.S. markets are the most investor-friendly markets. You see, this is why if you pay attention, if you're in touch with things like I am, and you follow, because I also follow Brazil, you can see here, EWZ is the ETF that I follow, that I do research on with the Brazilian economy. But whenever there's an election in Brazil, if you follow closely, you'll hear about, whether it's a right-leaning or left-leaning. And of course, they want more of a right-leaning president to win. Why? Because that's going to be more investor-friendly. And so, of course, if you look closely in Brazil, you can see most of these guys are connected to the U.S. They go to school in the U.S. Then there's other things I'm not going to talk about, but they're very connected to the U.S., whether they're left-leaning or right-leaning. You can just take a look closely at who these people are. And so what do I mean by investor-friendly? Well, of course, in countries like Brazil, you've got, namely, these are thought of historically as kind of a socialist type of countries, right? Socialist. Europe was somewhat of a socialist, right? Region, right? Many of the countries were considered socialist for a long time. And I've talked about this before, and I'm not an expert by any means in this type of discussion, but I know enough to know that Europe has gradually been weaning off its socialist policies over the years, just gradually becoming less socialist. And let me just mention, most people, when they talk about socialism, they use that synonymously with communism, and they're not the same. They're absolutely not the same. And once again, I'm not an expert in these types of things, these economic systems, political systems, but I know enough to know that socialism and communism are very often quite different, although there's some similar characteristics, right? Basically, socialism, you can own property, but generally speaking, socialism it can be actually quite beneficial for the population, especially the working class. And especially if you look at America, socialism would actually do quite nice for most Americans, because socialism would provide a single-payer healthcare system, a government-run healthcare system. Don't think that would be bad. Of course, you've been told that's bad. All the propaganda out there, all the talking heads, get the government out of the way, they're going to mess it up. Yeah, okay. Now, America's free market system has destroyed healthcare. That's why it's responsible for the majority of personal bankruptcies every year in America. The fact is that, and you're going to hear by all these libertarian fraudsters that want to make you think that they're for freedom and liberty, all the con men, they always talk about freedom, liberty, free market capitalism. Yeah. That's the little narrative they give you, so you'll follow them. Matter of fact, I saw our friend George Gammon, the real estate failure, jumped into one of his videos the other day, he ended his video, support, free market capitalism. You see, the fraudsters always throw that line out there. Write that down as a fucking golden rule to spot a con artist. When they're telling you about liberty and freedom and free market capitalism, when they throw that out there, you better damn well fucking believe you're dealing with a con man. Guaranteed. Write it the fuck down, take it to the fucking bank. Okay? Of course, I know that. I know Robini, he's one of the frauds they say he did. Now, I challenge you to look into what he did to have done that. It's not nonsense. He did nothing. And the reason why his buddies, his relatives, promoted him that way, it enabled him to make a lot of money selling his useless fucking research firm. Okay? Rubini didn't predict shit. Okay? Rubini predicted the financial crisis just like Robert Kiyosaki did. Okay? And of course, Kiyosaki claims he did as well. You guys need to get up off your fucking ass and do your work. You take my shit to people and say, you interview this guy. Let's talk about the fucking truth here. Let's talk about the reality. Okay, how you're being lied to. All these motherfuckers, they say, have predicted the financial crisis. They did not do it. And I'm going to show you. Okay? It's quite simple. What do you got to do? You got the evidence right there. I did it. I can be the one to show you none of these people did it. It's all a bunch of fucking lies. So think about it for a second. Think about it for a second. The government actually, I mean, you know, folks, the people out there that are brainwashed to make you think the government's evil, the government's bad, they want to get, these are the conspiracy lunatics. Okay? Obviously, I don't like the government. I don't vote. It's a scam. In my opinion, all politicians in every country of the world are always crooks and liars. Okay? They're scum. However, the government serves a vital purpose. And you know what that is? Big things they do. They can do big things. They achieve large-scale projects. People talk about how, oh, the government, oh, every time you've got these wackos out, these Peter Schiff type wackos. Okay? Every time there's a failure in some type of a government managed system or something, you hear about these wackos. But wait a second. Do you ever hear about them talking about how capitalism failed? Look at Boeing. Isn't that a good example of the failure of capitalism? Right? You can go down the list. You never hear that, do you? When companies fail and fuck up, you don't hear about them call into question capitalism. But when the government fucks up, you hear them call into question the competence of the government. You understand what's going on now, right? George Gammon's he's a fucking joke. He knows he's a con man. He knows he's a fraud, okay? He's an absolute fraud, absolute fucking con man. Gold-pumping, fear-mongering fraudster. And anytime he wants to confront me on that, right, on a neutral platform, let's go. Neutral platform. Someone else's channel that doesn't know either of us, that has rules. And it's not just about George Gammon. It's about the whole circle jerk of these people. It's not just about him. We're talking about the whole fucking army of these types of people. He's just one of the newer ones. There are thousands of these fucking pieces of trash. Okay? Thousands of them. So, let me continue here. You know, I mean, listen, if you're going to send people videos, don't even waste time sending these fucking numbskulls videos. That doesn't do anything. Okay? You want drama? How about trying to do something that's going to make a difference? How about confronting people that have exposure and saying, hey, why don't you interview this guy? Huh? You understand, that's just nonsense, dude. You're wasting everybody's time. Just stupid little YouTube fucking drama. I don't have time for that shit. I'm here to achieve something, to get something done. Now, at the very least, you know, you'll find out about these people, and you'll have on record, you'll have proof that they were notified. I know. I notified thousands of people 15 years ago, 17 years ago. I'm banned, you know. Why don't you do that instead? I think that's more productive, don't you think? Right? That's a little more productive. Okay? A lot more productive. These people that hold themselves out to, he presents the truth and right? You understand? That's who we're talking about. Then you'll find out. You'll find out. You see? That's what you need to be doing. I mean, I don't give a fuck with George. I mean, honestly, I don't even want to waste time talking to George Gammon. He's a fucking, what am I going to do? He's a con man. He's an absolute dirtbag fucking scumbag. What else can I say to him? It's just a waste of time. That's not going to achieve anything. That's why I already made the video exposing him. But what do you do from here? You understand? I'm talking about this critical stuff right now. Why isn't this why don't you send this to people that claim to want to expose things, that have large exposure, that I'm talking about with outsourcing and trade and healthcare and why I was banned. You understand? That's what we're talking about. You see? So, I think you should think a little bit differently here. Because, if this is 15 years ago, okay. But at this point, I mean, come on. I don't want to fucking waste my time with these fucking idiots. They don't even deserve to talk to me. I mean, George Gammon should pay me to talk to him personally. This is a fucking dirtbag clown loser. Some little fucking chump. I expose him, I move on. That's not going to go anywhere. That's we're talking about more important things here, right? So, getting back to the issue, you don't hear, right? You hear about, oh, well, the government, the post office, they're incompetent. Oh, yeah, this and that. Guess what, folks? Without the post office, you wouldn't have UPS. You wouldn't have Federal Express. The government built that whole infrastructure. Without the government, you wouldn't have SpaceX, right? Without the government, you wouldn't have the internet. You understand? The government is good and the government is needed when you're talking about major programs. They are able to do it and they're able to protect people against industry collusion. And that's exactly what you're seeing in America's healthcare system. The participation, the organized raising of prices in the healthcare system, right? So when it comes to the government, I mean, I think you need to have government run. I mean, this is what you have also largely, although fading in Europe. Government run healthcare, education is largely government run. Of course, in America, more and more it's becoming private, right? I mean, even in America, much of the prison system is privately run. You have stocks, publicly traded stocks that are prison companies. I mean, think about that, okay? When you're talking about large things, education, healthcare, basic necessities, basic things like that, and even to some extent, depending upon the certain type of what we're talking about, energy, right? So like utilities, right? Utilities distribution, stuff like that, should be government controlled completely, right? Completely. Now, higher risk ventures like deep offshore well drilling, right? With oil companies, that's risky shit. Okay, leave that to the private markets, right? But when you're talking about basic things, you got to keep it with the government. And the fact is that, of course, over the decades, it's when whittled away in America. This is why people can't afford basic things. Why do you think college tuition is so high? You say, well, Mike, what are you talking about? The government, is never involved in that. And of course, you're going to hear from the libertarian fraudsters. They're going to tell you that college expenses are so high because of the student loans, government subsidized student loans. That's what they're going to tell you. That's complete fucking horseshit. You know why? I talked about this many years ago. The reason why, there's many reasons why, but one of the main reasons why, which you never heard of, is because of the capitalism, because of free market capitalism. Okay, guess what? It's because of private equity firms have invested in these college campuses. That's why you've got all these nice facilities. if you haven't noticed that. It's because Wall Street is in bed with a lot of these universities, and they're funding them, they're providing them with investment money to compete against their competitors, their peers. So one college say, gosh, we'd like to have a new student center to compete with the college down the street. Well, guess what? They get funded, right? That's a big reason why college expenses have gotten out of control over the years, is because now you go to these. I mean, when I stayed in the dormitory, Jesus Christ, it looked like fucking prison. These fucking bunk beds and shit. Now you go to these colleges, Jesus Christ, man. Oh, the dormitory has granite countertops and hardwood floors. I mean, I'm fucking serious. Like, what's going on? So that's one reason why. Of course, the other reason why, and there's several reasons, but the subsidized student loan is not the reason. That's kind of the symptom. That's the symptom of the problem. Those loans have been put out there to feed the higher costs. Okay. Another big reason, depending upon, it's not going to hit every single university, but a lot of these universities that you can imagine, because these universities are profit machines, right? They consider themselves nonprofit, but they're fucking profit machines. And guess where they're making their profits? Many of them. It's their athletic departments. Okay? Their athletic departments. They consider many of these, I mean, think about it. This is big money, folks. You don't have to have a powerhouse athletic program to be pulling in a lot of money these days from your teams. Why? Because of the expansion of all these networks and media deals that you didn't have before. Okay. Anyway, that's off the topic. I'm going to get away from that now. The bottom line is the point I'm trying to make is that whenever you hear that a market is investor centric, like it's more investor friendly, that's good if you're an investor. But guess what? It sucks if you're a consumer. What that means is that you've got predators coming after you. Okay? You understand? It's not good for you as a person. Right? That's why America's healthcare industry is such a great investment. Think about that. How can it be such a great investment if people aren't paying out the ass? And that explains it right there. When I wrote America's Healthcare Solution in 2009, the first half of the book was completely dismantling America's healthcare system, dismantling all the myths and speaking the truth about the problems. And the reality is that all the sectors have a problem. Every single segment of the healthcare system. It's not just the pharmaceutical companies. It's not just the HMOs. It's not just the insurance companies. It's not just the physicians. It's all of them. It's everybody. And one of the things that I did when I was talking about the problems with the drug companies is I actually showed the charts. I posted stock charts, performance charts of the PBMs. And at the time, the PBMs was an industry, a sub-industry. Now it's been absorbed mostly. I mean, the PBMs, the pharmacy benefit managers, for the most part, have been bought out, right? United Health has got one. CVS has got one, right? I don't know. Does Cigna have one? But anyway, my point is that I showed the chart. You all know PBMs, right? The wholesalers of the pharmaceutical prescription drugs. I showed a stock chart versus the S&P, and they blew away the performance. And I showed those charts to emphasize to people what the hell is going on, right? Now, during that time, it just so happened that generally speaking, the pharmaceutical industry was kind of licking its wounds a little bit. And as you might recall, of course, that was a few years after the Merck Vioxx recall, right? But the pharmaceutical industry was not doing as great as it normally does. In the 90s, it had spectacular returns. And of course, it's done quite well, after, 2010. But during that period, it wasn't doing so great as it had historically. The pharmacy benefit managers were doing spectacular. So my point is that, think about it for a second. As I talk about investor friendly, when you hear investor friendly, you want to invest, but you don't want to live in a country with those predatory companies. Because investor friendly means it's bad news for the consumer. You see, very bad news. And that kind of explains a lot. And, everybody here, you guys need to be reading. If you haven't read America's Financial Apocalypse, the extended version, that's what you should be reading. You want to find out what's happening to America, what's happened. I mean, I wrote this 17 years ago, and it's still as valuable today as it was back then. Still, people don't truly understand what the fuck's happened, what's going on. This is the reality that no one's talking about. No one will talk about this. Okay? Right? Why aren't you all hearing this? The bottom line is that every single politician from Washington for the past 35 years is guilty of treason. They allowed corporate America, and they gave them all types of tax breaks to send your jobs overseas. And that built up the economies, these emerging economies. That's why they're emerging. They're emerging off your fucking dime. That's a fact. Okay? That's a fact. Where do you think innovation comes from? It comes from the West. That's a fact. And the more that you allow technology transfer, the more that China actually goes outright and steals technology. I mean, you all do know about all these people that have come to America working for U.S. companies, have stole all types of proprietary technology secrets and gone back to China. You know that, right? Not to mention the hacking that's continuously going on. I mean, you all do realize this, right? I mean, you're not hearing about any of this stuff. What do you hear instead? You hear airheads like Ray Dalio come out and tell you that China's going to be the next superpower. Fucking idiots. Complete nonsense from a country that's never done anything on its own other than steal from everybody else. Right? Think about that. Okay? And the fact is that you people out there, you're so loyal to Apple and all these big corporations. They sold your ass down the fucking gutter. They sold your ass down the gutter. You all don't see it. You don't realize it. You can't, there's no backlash now. It doesn't matter now. They've already got a big global brand now. They don't care about you now. You don't care if you buy their shit. It doesn't matter. I mean, why do you think Netflix is so fucking woke? They don't care. Most of their subscribers are international. 70% of the subscribers are outside of the U.S. And it's only going to increase. You see? So, of course, there's also international stocks. Look, if you live in one of these countries, in fact, most Chinese don't trust their stock market. I've said this many times before. They don't trust their stock market. You all know this, right? Most Chinese do not trust their stock market. This is why gold is soaring. Gold is doing well. Gold has had a spectacular year. Best year in almost 10 years. Right? It's going higher. Why? Because, well, Chinese don't trust their stock market. It's not even, the stock market even now, even before it collapsed, they weren't buying stocks for the most part. They invest in two things. Number one, real estate. Okay, that's the main thing. And then number two, gold. But primarily real estate. Of course, the real estate market is a complete disaster. That's why they've piled into gold. The Chinese are the ones that pushed the price of gold up, along with the central bank. You see, that's the reality. So you think about, it's one of these other countries. Let's say, let's not say a communist country. Let's talk about, let's say, India. How are you going to invest in India? You don't have a whole lot of options. There's more now. They have more ETFs now. But even still, you can't directly invest, you see. And the funds are going to be expensive. Why? Because they got to pay for all these exchange fees and all this bullshit. If you invest in foreign funds, you're going to pay high fees. That's fact. You're going to pay high fees. And over time, that's going to kill your performance. That alone is going to hurt your performance, right? And we can go ahead here and, in fact, we can even add right? VOO and VT. We talked about this. I did a video on it. And this is the amazing thing to me. It just tells you, it's just shocking how much stupid money is out there. It's just amazing to me. Like, if you actually don't even understand, like, I mean, you're not looking at charts, you're not looking at a chart. Like, take a look. Well, it only goes, this is not enough data. Ah, Jesus Christ, this fucking sucks. Guess I'm gonna have to go to Yahoo. Hope their system works. I mean, imagine for a second, and you have not only do you have people like advocating VT, the people that listen to these idiots are even dumber. Like, they follow them. Like, hey, dipshit, you're gonna listen to some fucking idiot on YouTube or anywhere else, and you don't even pull up a fucking chart. You don't even pull up a chart, right? I mean, it's an open and shut case, right? I mean, think about it for a second. Think about it. International. Do you want to invest in Zimbabwe, Kenya, right? Argentina, Ukraine, Russia, right? I mean, go for it. I mean, remember, these are indexes, so they're buy and hold. You got it? You get basically very little capital appreciation long term, as I showed you with FXI. You see that? Let's see. So this is the S&P. Let's take a look here. If this works. The new system sucks. Wow, this is totally terrible. It's a fucking joke. It's so slow. Let's see. See, look at that. What a fucking joke. Can you believe Yahoo used to be like one of the most valuable companies in the world? I've got a whole story on that. I've told it before. Whole story. I know Yahoo very well. Complete fucking destruction from within. Look at this shit show. Jesus fucking Christ. So this is the S&P. Okay, here you go. So this is VO. So it's finally got. So this is I guess. Yeah. So this is the red and green candles is VOO, the S&P ETF, and then this is VT, the total stock. I mean, total. What do you want? You want that? Yeah. Good luck. Just think about it. Right? Look at that. Jesus Christ. Wow. 166%. This is inception. 166%. We'll call it 167 for VT since 2010 or so. Versus VOO, 405%. Wow. Wow. So think about that for a second. Wow. I mean, what kind of an idiot is gonna say, whoa, that's what I did before. Guess what? Numbnuts. This is 15 fucking years. This is 15 fucking years of consistent outperformance, of consistent blistering outperformance. And we know why. Because VT is 40% international. Can you imagine if VT was 30% S&P? Lower and lower S&P and more international, right? Can you imagine? Guess what, folks? Let me give you let me break it to you here. Let me give you a little secret here. Some of you may not know of. The best, the greatest brands, the best companies in the world, the most profitable companies in the world, the most dominant companies in the world. Well, it just so happens they're not in Cambodia. They're not in the Philippines. They're not in China. They're not in Uruguay. They're not in Ukraine. You understand? They're not in Russia. They're in the US of fucking A. They're in America. That's why you buy the S&P. You got it? Everybody understand that? Now, if you're buying VT and you didn't look at this chart and they didn't prompt further investigation, I mean, obviously, when you pull up a chart like this since inception and you go every single time period and it's the same result, massive underperformance, you got to look into what's going on. And then you realize, oh, maybe international sucks, right? And then you take a look at the countries that this includes. You understand? It's a no-brainer. If you're not doing that, do yourself a favor and never invest in the stock market. Ever. If you're that fucking stupid, and worse, this is even worse, if you're listening to somebody to tell you to buy VT, right? And you just buy it because you hear them say it all the time, you're in deep trouble. Let me just tell you, I can tell already how your life has been and how it's going to turn out, and it's not too admirable. I would say you shouldn't focus on investing. You should focus on fixing your life. Probably get some professional assistance. Okay? Think about this, folks. Think about it. Think about it. Now, you're hearing this from one of the world's leading investment analysts. That's fact. It's fact. If you don't know that, well, that's for you to learn on your own. It doesn't take a professional analyst. It doesn't take a leading expert to go through this, what I've done. Okay. In fact, every amateur investor should be doing this. It's pretty fucking basic. It's like elementary school basic, by the way. Elementary school. I would expect a fifth grader, maybe even a fourth grader, to understand this. I would expect someone in junior high school to not just understand this, but actually go through and realize this on their own. You see? Remember, folks, generally speaking, countries that are good for investors, right? The markets that are good for investors aren't good for people, the consumers. So it just so turns out that many of these countries that have shitty investment returns, shitty stock markets, are actually better in many ways to live in, because you don't get fucked by all these predatory companies. You can actually own and operate your own small business. You don't have Walmart breathing down your fucking neck using all types of anti-competitive tactics. You understand? You don't have a economic system and tax system that favors these giants. Kind of how like America was 50 years ago, and before that, 60 years ago, before they had all these mega giants, right? That was, ironically, coincidentally, by the way, think about before America had all these giant corporations that taken over everything. Is it a coincidence that America was much better to live in? It was a much better country, much friendlier place, and much, people could afford healthcare, people could afford housing. You got it? You understand? I mean, you know, these are the things that people need to be hearing. Okay, and they're not hearing these things. Why? It's not rocket fucking science, by the way. It's not rocket science. Okay, and if you didn't know this already, then you are way out of the loop. You're out of the loop completely. You don't have a perspective of what's going on. You really don't know what's going on. Okay. Anybody. Now, that's to say, by the way, I invest in international stocks, international funds, but guess what? That's me. That's me. Everybody's not me. And guess what? I don't buy and hold. Okay? I don't buy and hold. And the vast majority of people are not capable of understanding what the fuck's going on. That's why they're buying these international funds. And once again, international funds, generally speaking, do not experience the levels of capital appreciation, long-term capital appreciation, as advanced economies. They just don't, for many reasons. And the perfect example, as I showed you guys, FXI. Okay. FXI. Now, say, well, gosh, that's just an index. Yeah, but it's the 50 largest cap stocks in China. Okay. You see that? So what about, let's take a look at futures, Shanghai Composite. The problem with the Shanghai Composite is that unless you're Chinese living in mainland China, how are you going to buy it? You understand? How are you going to buy it? And that's if you trust it. I mean, you all do know, of course, that right now, part of this economic stimulus passed by the CCP, part of those funds have gone to financial institutions to buy stocks, Chinese stocks, to prop up the market. You do know that, right? Are you all aware of that? See, this new system doesn't show this fucking bullshit. The older platform on Yahoo did show historical. This doesn't show shit. Fucking stupid. You all do know that, right? They're buying Chinese stock. You know, kind of like how the Japanese central bank has been buying Japanese stocks. You all do know that, right? Right? It doesn't work. So, take a look, folks. You want to buy and hold China? There you go. There you go. Okay. See that? There you go. Now, the amazingly hilarious thing is that I can guarantee you nobody on ScamTube knew what I just told you. Unless they listened to me, which I said this 2 years ago. Nobody. Okay? How do I know this? Because not a whole lot of professionals know this. Okay? I don't know how many do. I don't know how many fund managers do. You have to have a certain big picture understanding of things to know this. Because it's not just looking at charts. Okay? It's not just that. It's also understanding the inner mechanisms of these economies. Okay? It's knowing a lot of things. And it's also knowing, for instance, geopolitics, what's going on geopolitically, right? Things can change, but one thing is for sure, it doesn't really matter where China goes, right? And of course, I predicted all this stuff. Remember, well, some of you don't know, but back in early 2000, mid 2000, all these idiots were pumping Alibaba. And I was reminding them, you guys are crazy. They didn't know what was going on. They didn't even know China was collapsing. You see? They didn't know. They had no fucking clue, just like they didn't know. All these fake gurus didn't know the U.S. market was going to collapse in early 2022. They didn't know. Even in mid 2022, when the markets had already collapsed to a large degree, they were still doing their little fake discounted cash flow bullshit without understanding that the movement of the market determines 90% of the movement of 90% of the stocks 90% of the time. If you can forecast the market, okay, if you can't, you can do all your fucking bullshit valuation analysis that you want. Doesn't fucking matter. When that market fucking goes down, it's taking your ass down. But these idiots don't know that because they're fucking a bunch of frauds. Same frauds, charging money, e-begging, and the stupid people feeding them. The stupid, brainless idiots that don't even realize that they're the ones that are going to lose their ass. They're not going to do anything. They're not going to make any money. It's the fraudsters running this fucking scam on YouTube, the ones that are going to make their money. Okay? So you want to send videos. You send videos of me discussing what's going on in the world of all this stuff, why I got fucking banned from day one. Okay? Anything else is just fucking useless drama. Is a waste of my fucking time. I don't have time for fucking drama. Okay? You see? So you look at the Bovespa, Brazilian stock index. Okay, guess what? You don't live in Brazil, so you're going to have to invest in some fund. Okay, that means you're going to have to pay high fees. You're going to have to deal with currency exchange issues, right? This is EWZ. This is the 10-year chart of EWZ right here. You can make a lot of money off EWZ because of all the stuff that goes on in Brazil, right? But you buy and hold it, you're not going to do shit. Not going to do shit. See that? Take a look. Tell me this doesn't look similar to FXI. Why is that? Because the time to own these big emerging markets was the turn of the century. You see? Early 2000s. You see? Opening the floodgates of the free trade scam. You understand? Take a look at that. Financial crisis, boom. But guess what? Gradual winding down. You see? You can make a lot of money if you know what's going on. For instance, here. Okay. This is the whole car wash scandal. The biggest political scandal probably in history, certainly in Brazil's history. Right? With Rousseff was running the country and Lula da Silva was involved. Big fucking, major fucking graft. This is Petrobras. When Petrobras, a lot of other bullshit going on. And guess what? If you took a chance, take a look. 2 years' time, up 250%. You see. But buy and hold, forget it. Buy and hold, there you have it. Doesn't work. Too much volatility, too much shit going on. When you're talking countries, Brazil. Remember, Brazil, I haven't followed this. I don't know. You all know the details more than me, I'm sure. But I just know that, apparently, I don't know, something, Brazil demanded something from Twitter. They wanted to limit freedom of speech, criticism of the government or something. Elon Musk, of course, talks tough. Oh, no, freedom of... Of course, what happens? He fucking bails. He gives in, pays the money. Because it's all about money for Elon. He wants to pretend like it's not. But my point is that, these countries, people don't even know. In these countries, that's why I'm saying another reason why the fuck are you going to invest internationally? Do you even know how these fucking countries operate? No. Do people even know the need to ask that question? No, because they're fucking stupid. Listen, if you're fucking stupid, actually, if you're smart, you'll realize you can't beat the market. Buy the fucking index fund and forget about it. Even someone who thinks that they're dumb, if they're doing that, they're actually smart and they don't realize it. But I'm telling you right now, those are the smart people. You see? It's the dumb, greedy people who think they're going to beat. Remember, the stock market's a competitive game. There's two teams only. It's like football. Think about the NFL, the Pro Bowl team, the superstars. Imagine if the Pro Bowl team from the NFL was playing a game against like junior high school football kids. That's what you got. Okay? How are you going to be on the Pro Bowl team? How are you going to compete against me, against guys with insider information? And I can tell you right now, just about every single large hedge fund operates on insider information. You can write that down. Practically, the other ones that don't are they're gaming the system. they're basically going on the media and getting the stooges to buy their stocks to pump them up or to short them. Like when Bill Ackman goes on TV and tells everyone, "Oh, this is a great stock. You all should. I think it's going to go up." Or like he did, when he's a genius, the greatest trade. He told everyone, "Oh, the COVID." Yeah, he's a stock manipulator. Is what he is. You see, that's a strategy a lot of these guys use as well. Or also, what they'll do is there's a lot of illegal stuff going on that's basically made legal, right? But anyway, how are you going to compete against all these different people? And most of them can't beat the index, by the way, consistently over the long term. So you've got the guys who got all the resources. They've got unlimited financial resources, unlimited capital resources, unlimited human resources. They've got decades of experience. They can tap anyone they need. Many of them have insider information, right? And then you've got all these lightning speed algorithmic trading firms that just like fucking front run everybody. How are you going to outcompete them? And then you have, and that's like the people thinking they're going to short-term trade. They're fucking stupid. It's like, you're not going to use this. You have zero chance. And then how are you going to outcompete the guys that have an army of analysts? And whether you think so or not, they do get to talk to corporate executives that you don't get, they have conversations that you're not hearing. Okay. Through road shows and stuff like that. How are you going to beat them? All these, how? And most of them can't beat the index long term. So what do you think? I mean, hell, I can't even. You have people out there that think that VT is better than VO. So I mean, the argument that they can't beat the index is not even going to fly with them because they think fucking VT is a great fund. I mean, those people are just fucking. They're helpless. They're something's wrong with them. You see, it's that simple. Yeah. 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 That's the way it goes, folks. International funds generally suck, right? They generally suck. Will they have a period again? The golden years, like they did early 2000s, right? Maybe at some point, but I mean, are you going to be able to recognize it? You understand what I'm saying? This is the reality, okay? This is the reality. I mean, why anybody would, it's just shocking to me. Does anybody, you all should look into the car wash case in Brazil, okay? To give you an idea what happened, what Petrobras was involved in. Why do you think Petrobras fucking collapsed? They're still not anywhere near where they were, I don't think. They're not even close to it. I mean, take a look at the chart. Take a look at it. See that? Take a look at that. Of course, this was the peak when we had a pretty high inflation. There was a several month period before the financial crisis during the summer of 2008 where inflation was very high because of energy mainly. And so, you had record oil prices back then anyway. But you can see Petrobras has never recovered. And take a look. So you can see here it went as low as it lost 75% in a matter of course, this was the oil glut, right? This is the oil glut that began late 2014. Oil prices collapsed, right? Because the Saudis, some say they were trying to put the fracking industry out of business by lowering prices since fracking is more costly. I don't know about that, but and then you had during the same period, you had everything exposed with the car washing, the car wash scandal with Petrobras, all the fucking bribes and shit. So you can see Petrobras was as low as under $3. Another thing people don't understand about international investing, back when Rousseff was the president during that car wash scandal, I think around 2015 or so, you can look into it. There was pressure on Brazil because Petrobras is mainly owned by the state. It's owned by the Brazilian government. You all know that, right? As I mentioned before, many of these companies that are essential for the country, their national security interest, Brazil owns the majority. Well, I don't know about majority now, but certainly a very large interest in Petrobras, probably the majority. Just like Vale, they own a very large interest in Vale. Okay. Once again, I mentioned earlier, first of all, Latin American countries are more socialist, right? And they're going to control things that are important for large scale, trade and commerce and necessities for the people, you see. So back during that time, I think it was Rousseff who actually basically told Petrobras they had to lower their gas prices. Why? Because Brazil was facing an economic problem. The economy was screwed. And so you had the president force this company to lower their prices. Think about that. How can they do that? Because they run the company. Did you know that? Any of you all know this? No, you didn't know this. How do I know this? Why do you think I'm one of the top analysts in the world, folks? I don't even focus on Brazil. I'm a generalist, which I don't know many generalists out there. Analysts usually, they focus on a specific sector. You see, they got a pretty easy job. Focus on 4, 5, maybe 6 companies. That's all they do, and they work with about 2, 3, 4, 5 people. You see, and the amazing thing is how as easy as their job is, and they fucking suck. I swear to God, I wish I could find an analyst that was consistently not right all the time, but consistently pretty right. I wouldn't need to do anything, but I've never found any. Now, part of that is because, of course, that's the sell side, right? That's Wall Street. There are, I'm sure there's some good buy side analysts that work for funds. I don't personally know of any, but I'm sure there are. But they're not going to give you their research. You see, all the stuff out there on Wall Street, why do you think it's free? It's free for a reason. Why do you think why do you think it's out there? You see? Same reason why you're getting free stuff on YouTube. Same reason why all these clowns, you're getting their shit for free. Okay? You get what you fucking paid for. In fact, it's much worse off. You see? Well, Petrobras, the problem with Petrobras is a lot of controversy that's been going on for about a year now, especially since Lula da Silva's back in office, the leftist president, about, this is going on with Vail as well. In terms of, there was a lot of very generous dividend payouts, during the commodities boom, right? Not so long ago. These companies were paying out big time dividends, huge fucking dividends. And so they're saying, well, wait a second, what are you guys doing? So there's a big pushback. You should not count on these companies paying out as much as they were. I would say it ain't going to happen. It's a big political issue. It's been going on. I wouldn't count on that. But anyway, Vail also collapsed, down to $2 or $3, I believe, several years ago. When that happens, you got to understand something. These are essentially state-controlled companies. The state can say, you know what? We don't need to put these on the market. We're going to go ahead and acquire the rest of the shares. Okay, just like Rousseff demanded that Petrobras sell gas at a lower price. Okay, so once again, yeah, that sucks if you're an investor in Brazilian stocks, in Petrobras at that time. But guess what? It's good for the people. You understand? An investor-centric market is necessarily going to be a consumer-unfriendly market, and vice versa. Once again, that's why if you look at a lot of these countries that have shady markets or shady practices, excluding China. I'm not talking about China. A lot of these countries actually, they're pretty nice countries to live in because they haven't allowed their countries to be transformed into fucking corporations, unlike America and soon to be Europe. That's what's happened by design. You understand? You see? The countries are for the people. America, it's not for the people, it's for the fucking corporations. You see? It's kind of interesting if you look at it that way, right? You see? So I say, you want to invest internationally? Well, invest in the U.S. S&P index, and if you want to invest internationally, maybe you might want to invest your life in one of these countries. Maybe you want to live in one of these countries at some point. Okay, after you have made enough money. You see, you might want to retire in one of these countries. You might want to spend time in one of these countries, extended time. You see, that's the only investment that you should be making, for the most part, generally speaking, in these countries, if you're from the West. You see, why? Because I just explained all this. It's all about how the countries are run, and it's reflected in the stock markets. You see, you all understand that? You guys get what I'm saying? You can't have it both, folks. You can't have both. If you're in a country that's good for investors, it's going to automatically suck for you as a consumer, as a person. It's fact. And I've just proven that. And I've explained it. Now, I'm not saying every single time, every single instance. There's obviously, give and take, and there's some exceptions. But generally speaking, that's the way it is. Okay? That's the way it is. And, there's some places in Europe that are still, although it's fading fast, desirable, right? It's fading really fast, actually. Like over the past 5 years, it's shocking how much Europe has gone to the wayside. Prior to, you know, 10 years ago, Europe, I think largely was the countries were nice. Even though they had problems, there were some issues, early things going on, but now it's pretty much a mess, right? So why do you think everybody is going away from the West? Why do you think everyone's going to Latin America? You all understand that, right? You all do realize that. Hopefully you all realize, right? There are millions of people, there are millions of Americans living in Latin America, living in Asia. Why do you think they're doing that? And it's increasing more and more and more. He knows he knows everything that you can learn online. What's the latest visa scheme? These visa programs are changing all the time. Okay? They're changing all the time. It's all free. You don't need nobody. It's all nonsense. It's fucking bullshit. You see? You see, that's the reality, folks. Now, on the other hand, you've got corruption in these countries. You've got a lot of corruption. But guess what? If you go to these countries with money already, you don't need to work. None of that stuff bothers you. It doesn't affect you. You're not going to one of these countries to work. Okay? It doesn't bother you that you don't have any opportunity. You took advantage of your opportunity in the West. You see, that's where you made your money and you've gotten out. You understand? That's the deal. But you're going to live in one of these countries. You got kids to put through school. Well, you're going to be spending $30,000 to $50,000 a year, starting. Well, actually, probably starting $20,000 to $30,000 starting in preschool, and then grade 1, $30,000 to $50,000, all the way up through high school every year. By the way, every single year, if you want them to have a decent fucking education for international school. Okay. You see, that's the reality. See, those countries, so those places, to get ahead, you got to have money. There's fucking corruption all over the place. But in America, in the West, it's hidden. You see, you have to be very sophisticated to see it. In these developing countries, it's everywhere. You can see it everywhere. It's pretty obvious. And the people say, well, gosh, why don't they do anything? They can't. They're powerless. They know they can't do anything. See, the scam, the control mechanism is to create this facade called a democracy where you convince people that you've got two different parties and your vote matters. So that when things go bad, you say, well, I'm going to vote for the other person. And it's not until most people, if they're lucky, until they're too old to care anymore, when they realize they've been fucking defrauded their whole life by this scam system. They finally realize that it doesn't fucking matter, that it's all the same. You see? You understand? That's how it works, folks. And I have a lot more respect, to be honest with you, with people, to a large degree, with Europeans and people from Latin America. You know why? Even though our Wall Street parasitic satanic friends, money worshipping scumbag friends, and their buddies, their politician buddies, and everyone connected to them, even though they have ruined Europe, and that's what happened, by the way. America, I mean, you all know how it works. I mean, America's pulling Europe into their system, you see? And, it's even still, as much as Europe has come closer to America in terms of how the economics and finances work. basically to fuck the consumers. Still, you still have people in Europe that will protest, right? You still have people in Latin America that will protest. They raise bus fares in Brazil. Guess what? When they raise the price of the buses, you know what happens? The Brazilians fucking riot. They take to the fucking streets. Why do they do that? So they're crazy. No. They're reminding the government, okay, they can't be pushed around. You see? In America, you've got all these gatekeeping scumbags, you know, the guys in the media, the talking heads. They make sure and tell you, oh, we have to have peaceful demonstrations. Folks, let me explain something to you. You know, sometimes you can't get your point across with a peaceful demonstration. Okay? You know what I'm saying? You know, that's, if you think about, for instance, if the people that are protesting, for whatever reason, if they're protesting, you can go back to let's say, after the financial crisis, and you had the sovereign debt crisis in Europe, and you had those people. If you don't take a look find the videos on ScamTube, people protesting there, okay? They were burning down the cities, okay, with all this austerity that these crooks, these political crooks, were imposing on the people for the crimes that the bankers committed. Those people are thinking to themselves, this is war, right? They're thinking this is war. The government is waging war on us. And they're right. Well, imagine if you're carrying out, if there's two countries that are having a war, and they're just like peaceful demonstrations. It's no longer a war. If one country is trying to take another country, and the country that's being taken says, okay, well, we want to be peaceful, and we want a peaceful demonstration. Guess what? They get taken. You understand what I'm saying? Now, that aside, I will say, you know, this whole January 6th thing, complete psychopathic fucking demonstration. Completely ridiculous, okay? Lunatics, and that's how you can tell that Americans are under complete mind control. They go and they protest. I would say, I don't know if you'd call it violent. I haven't really seen a whole lot of the footage. I would say, from what I've seen, I don't know if you would say it's violent, but certainly aggressive, certainly hostile, right? A hostile protest. When you're talking about that many people, nothing like what they do in Europe, obviously, okay? They'll fucking burn down the buildings in Europe. But for Americans, it's pretty aggressive, right? So you've got these people that organize and protest kind of for the first time. And what's it over? Is it because they realize they're being defrauded by the government? The government has sold them out for years, allowing corporations to send their jobs overseas and their wealth and their incomes and their future. Is it because Congress has allowed America's healthcare system to completely fuck them? No. It's because they were told their cult leader, Donald Trump, had the election stolen from him. And that was solidified by Alex Jones and Tucker Carlson and all these other idiots. Think about that for a second. That's why oftentimes I have a difficult time respecting American people versus many people from around the world. When you put things into context, Americans are complete fucking flakes, and they don't even realize it. You understand what I'm saying, right? Think about it for a second, folks. This is how under control people are. They've got them distracted with stupid fucking things. And meanwhile, now you look at these two candidates, it doesn't really matter who wins, right? They're both ready to send more money to Ukraine and Israel. They're both ready to send more money. Money that we don't have, that's going to put us further into debt. And guess what's going to happen? Congress is going to come back and say, we need to cut mandatory benefits, mandatory items, by law, they have to pay them, Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid. You understand? It's the same fucking song and dance. Americans never say, wait a second, you can't do that. You see? This is why it's I don't even like to talk to Americans. It's fucking stupid. They're fucking stupid. And I have to believe that, Europeans are going to become less and less informed. It's already happening. And they're going to become just as stupid once the leaders over there are taught the tricks, how to control the population from the media crime bosses. You see? That's what it's all about, folks. Complete control of the population by the media. That's what it's all about. The media is the problem. The media is the absolute fucking problem. The media creates your perception of reality. Your perception of reality. And today, media is everywhere. Media is YouTube. Media is Twitter, is all this shit. Right? Facebook. And you have all these groups on there and everybody, Folks, how come there's not all this fuss about jobs going overseas? How come, right? You understand? People say, okay, they'll mention it once or twice. When Trump talks about it, he'll talk about it just to get elected. This is something that should be talked about every fucking day if you understand what's happened. Okay? Or the healthcare situation. It's a complete farce. It's a complete scam. These are the issues that matter the most. Where's the jobs? How come people can't afford healthcare in America? Right? Corporate America fueled China. Corporate America facilitated China's rise in their military. Understand that. Corporate America funded China's hostile, aggressive military campaign. Without corporate America, it wouldn't happen. Oh, and I forgot. You greedy consumers who bought the dog shit from Apple, from HP, and all these companies that made their shit in China. You didn't bother to look at the impact. Well, guess what? I can guarantee you, people in other countries, they understand. You all didn't do it. You didn't do it. You didn't boycott Apple. You didn't boycott these companies. You kept buying their shit. Right? And now you see what's happened. Now people have to become Uber drivers. All these kids want to become YouTubers. You understand? Where's the fucking jobs? Okay? This is what needs to be fucking talked about. You got it? This is what you need to send to somebody. You got it? What is talking about the outsourcing of the jobs, destroying America's future, and Americans' future, is that controversial? Is that too controversial? Is discussing America's healthcare scam too controversial? Right? The facts I've told you all about. Americans should pay the least for all medical therapies and prescription drugs, by far. We should be paying the smallest of anyone because we fund it all. We fund the majority of these innovations. Taxpayers. And guess what? We pay the most. Why? Because Americans don't know what the fuck's going on, so they don't protest. They believe they're talking heads on TV. They believe they're political leaders. Okay? That's the fucking reality. This is the fucking reality. People don't understand the real issues. The real fucking issues start with jobs and healthcare. Okay? Remember, I wrote about this 17 years ago. It's the focus. Okay? This has destroyed America. This is why you've got so many homeless people on the streets. Those jobs aren't here anymore. And guess what? Why do you have so much of a drug problem? No jobs, do more drugs. Why do you think you have almost every state now has fucking casinos? When I was growing up, all you had was Las Vegas and a couple of Indian reservations. Okay? It's a known fact. When the economy is suffering, you put a casino over there. You understand? This is what's going on. The jobs have been replaced with homeless people, junkies, and casinos. Oh, and I forgot lottery tickets. Right? You all don't know. You go talk to your fucking parents and see what they say. You play this for your parents. Okay? You all are too young to know. You all don't know, man. This has been going on for decades. I warned about it. I warned about all aspects of it, from the economic aspect, national security aspect. Okay? And that's why I got banned. And still today, nobody's talking about it. You hear some people talk about some of the points, they don't tell you the full truth. Just like Bernie Sanders. Several years ago, when he's running for president, and he's talking about raising the minimum wage, right? But Bernie, you want to raise minimum wage, but you don't want to close the borders. What the fuck do you think is keeping minimum wage down? The best way to raise the minimum wage is to close the fucking borders. But you see, he doesn't want to talk about that. Why? Because Bernie's a fake, like all these fuckers. They're all phonies. You understand? They're just telling you what you want to hear. Just like Trump. He says he's going to bring the jobs back. He brought nothing back. Says he's going to, send Hillary to jail, investigate Hillary. He did none of that. Says he's going to build a wall. He didn't build shit. You got it? They're all full of shit. Okay, that's just a fact. And, the people out there, you guys, this is the problem. This is why I say, why do you think they promote these talking heads? Why do you think, like I said, if they have exposure, it's for a reason. You understand now? Why do you think these guys have big exposure? The guys with the biggest exposure, why do you think so? Why? Think about it. Joe Rogan. Why? You're going to hear this on Joe Rogan? No. You're going to hear a bunch of fucking bullshit. Okay? Stupid crap that doesn't even matter. And disinformation. Right? What are you going to hear from Jordan Peterson? You understand? A bunch of horse shit. What are you going to hear from Elon Musk? Elon Musk is going to tell you whatever he can to make money for him. Okay? That's the reality. Why isn't someone saying what I'm telling you? I wrote about it 17 years ago. I mean, it's been 17 years. It's gotten a whole hell of a lot worse. I mean, it should be obvious by now, at least to some of these people who are supposed to be brilliant, right? How come that's not an issue? I'm just telling you, folks, if what happened in America with the healthcare crisis, the healthcare scam, and the outsourcing, if all this happened during the same time period, to the same degree in Europe, there'd be big problems. There'd be people burning the streets down. Now, gradually, it's going to be more gradual in Europe, and it's already begun. They're whittling down their healthcare system more and more gradually, just kind of. But what I'm saying is that you couldn't pull this shit off during the same time span what you're pulling off in America, sending all these jobs and destroying, creating this crazy, inexpensive healthcare system. You couldn't do that in Europe. Eventually, it will be, America's kind of like 20, 30 years ahead of Europe in terms of that system. You see? But, 20, 30 years from now, Europe is going to be exactly where we are. Their universal care system, well, probably not exactly. They'll probably still have little remnants of the universal care system, but they're going to be paying more and more and more out of pocket and getting less from their single payer system. And they've already, the outsourcing has already been going on there for a while, but it's not anywhere near to the extent of America. You see, that's what's going on. Basically, what's happening, this has been going on for quite some time, is you're seeing a convergence of the U.S. and Europe. The convergence is kind of, you can count Australia there and Canada kind of with Europe. The convergence is basically these countries are coming closer to a U.S. in terms of the U.S.'s legal system, economic system, financial system. The U.S. is converging towards Canada and Europe and Australia in terms of their kind of liberal policies, you see. So there's kind of a convergence of all these areas coming together. You see, that's kind of what's going on. Folks, this is the critical shit, okay, that you're not going to hear anywhere else. The critical shit. And of course, once again, just to remind everyone how this ties in to the investment world. Once again, investor-centric markets, countries are going to be consumer unfriendly. The U.S. is the most investor-centric, the most investor-friendly country. I mean, you're going to hear different things, but I'm talking about the capital markets. In terms of its capital markets, right, it's the best for investors, right? And by the way, let me just mention this whole nonsense behind the tax cut, the corporate tax cut. That's complete fucking bullshit, because everybody goes by the that's the gross tax rate. They don't talk about the effective tax rate. So the whole big thing was, the U.S. tax is one of the highest corporate taxes in the world, right? What was it, 32% or something? And now it's like, what, 21%? But you see, think about it for a second. If it's that high, if it's so much higher than many other countries, why is it that many companies in America are paying zero taxes? The reason why is because when you look at tax rates, how they're reported as prior to adjustments. So it's not the gross tax rate that's important. It's a consideration of all the adjustments. What's important is the effective tax rate, right? The actual tax rate that companies are paying, you see. But that's difficult to report because every country has different, tax credits and subsidies and so on and so forth. But what they should be doing, they could do a different reporting. But my point is that that was a complete farce. The Trump tax cuts, absolute farce, because the U.S. corporations, many of them are paying very little taxes. It depends upon, the oil industry was paying a lot of taxes. There's no doubt about that. They're very heavily taxed. But generally speaking, it's complete bullshit. That's like measuring debt. How is sovereign debt measured? It's not measured in terms of dollars. It's measured in terms of debt to GDP, right? You see, that's a metric that's used. You don't just measure the dollar amount. Why? Because the dollar amount doesn't really give you perspective. Just like the gross tax rate doesn't really tell you what the fuck's going on. You got to understand the effective tax rate. So what they should be doing is reporting, say, the top certain number of companies, what their effective tax rate is, say, for several different sectors, to give you an idea. That's how it should be done, you see. But, you don't hear. Of course, I wrote about all this in America's Financial Apocalypse, by the way. I also wrote about the way they hide everything. Is you also got to look at the productivity gains, right? One of the ways that they have raised taxes over the years without people knowing it, and this is why the middle class and working class they've had very few gains, is because as the productivity of America has done quite well consistently for quite a long time, those gains have not been shared with the working and middle class. They haven't been shared anywhere near. And what's happened is that over time, the taxes have been raised. In other words, you don't just look at federal income tax. You look at FICA, right? The FICA taxes have gone up big time. The FICA, right? The Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid tax, right? Those have gone up big time, you see. And then you look at also all types of levies, fees. In fact, I wrote about how there's kind of like they're going to be hiding taxes. There's like hidden taxes in America. How? Well, this is back fucking 20 years ago. I was noticing this shit. More and more, they're assessing taxes and fees on everything. Have you ever looked at most of you don't even have cable anymore, but take a look at if you remember seeing a cable bill or even your mobile phone bill. You've got all these fucking fees and all this nonsense, right? These are all hidden taxes, by the way. You see? So, the bottom line, folks, is it's pretty obvious that there's a problem in capitalism, okay? And I'll tell you right now, speaking of investments, I've said it before, I've been saying it for years, and I stand by this. Now, I know people that want to try and criticize me use a low IQ, because how are they going to criticize me? I mean, give me a fucking intelligent argument, right? What are you going to do? They're going to say I'm a communist, right? But capitalism has failed. Capitalism has absolutely failed. Okay, there's no doubt about it. And I don't know how most people don't see it by now, because every year it's getting worse and worse and worse. It's absolutely failed. It has become a flawed system. And this is why you have so many mega wealthy people who are controlling everything. Okay? And if I was running the show, and understand this, I've never worked for salary in my life. Ever. I've worked only in the most entrepreneurial, capitalistic fields. Wall Street and venture capital. Think about that for a second. So I'm telling you that because understand this from my perspective. If I'm telling you this, understand how hard this should hit home. Capitalism has become a scam. It's an absolute fucking scam. Okay? You're not going to find many people from my field that are going to tell you that. It's an absolute fucking scam. Did it begin that way? No. But over the past couple of decades, I would say what really turned things over was the dot-com bubble. I think that was the turning point. And of course, that was around, right around when NAFTA was launched, a few years after NAFTA was launched. And you had, people just making insane amounts of money for doing nothing. And, a great example, by the way, FYI, is, I call out Tom Nash as a Palantir pumper, right? Palantir is a great example. I would never even waste my time looking into the company, not only because it's not transparent, they don't want to fucking show you anything. I mean, I don't deal with black boxes, but also because I don't deal with companies where the CEO is treating it as his own personal fucking banking account. The CEO has cashed out around $1.5 billion in stock from that company. The company just went public a few years ago, and he's already cashed out. He cashed out in the first year and a half $1 billion. Think about that one. Sorry, I don't want to invest in a company where that's going on, by the way. Think about that. I wrote about the fraud behind executive stock options 17 years ago in my book. That's one of the things I wrote about, how it's a scam. It's absolute fucking fraud. So you mean to tell me that the executives don't know how the company's doing? You know how executive stock options work, right? There's window periods where you can get out of the stock. You can't do it like a few months before earnings. I mean, you think that when a company is indeed, you think these guys don't know? Of course they fucking know. So why don't they have stock options that, that you can vest like after 10 years or something like that? Why do you think so many of these failures, and most of the CEOs in these companies are failures, by the way, 90% are absolute losers. And I would say 9% are okay, and then like 1% maybe are good. Most of them are just fucking losers. But guess what? They all have one thing in common. They all leave, whether they do well or they fail, they all leave very well paid. Think about that. Okay? Think about a guy like Elon Musk. Richest man in the world. How much is he worth? 200 billion. Okay? Set to be the first $1 trillion guy in 10 years. What's he really done? What has he done? Has he innovated anything? What has he done? I mean, think about it. What has he done? Like, he didn't even start Tesla, right? He bought it and kicked the guys out. You understand? He's constantly, high-noting everything and just complete bullshit, right? Any ideas he has, he gets from his engineers. And he calls himself an engineer, by the way, which is a joke, which is a fraud. I mean, you could actually consider him as much of an engineer as I consider Lex Friedman, which, someone was posting the other day, they said, oh, your book, America's Financial Apocalypse, is like a PhD thesis, right? Which, I think it is, actually. But I was thinking the other day, like, wait a second. Maybe it's like 3 or 4 PhD theses, considering it's, more than 500 pages, and considering that, the PhD engineer, Lex Friedman, his PhD thesis was like 40 fucking pages, double spaced. I mean, what? That's like an undergraduate thesis, dude. 40-page thesis for PhD engineering? Well, excuse me? That just confirms what I thought about the guy. There's something that doesn't make sense. This guy, I think he didn't do his fucking coursework. He got a pass. I mean, it's in the same department as his dad. It's clearly there's something going on. No doubt about it. You see? There's no doubt about it. But think about it for a second. What did Elon Musk do? I mean, I'll give it to him. I think that Elon Musk, the only thing he's done, in my opinion, that's admirable, is he started, well, we'll say he started a car company. He didn't really start it, but he basically took it from infancy, right? And he's succeeded. He's succeeding. And it doesn't matter if it's a combustion company or, look, the reality is, he gamed the system. Why do you think he bought Tesla? Because he knew he would be jumping all over the government subsidy gravy train. Okay? But still, look, starting a car company is fucking hard. It's very capital intensive. It's extremely difficult if you're not already kind of a conglomerate. It's extremely fucking difficult to do. Many probably would say it's impossible. Okay, so I will give him credit on that. He clearly, from an operational standpoint, that's good. But anything else, no, I don't, no, nothing. Yet you've got his fanboys that think he's like he's God. Okay, here's my point, folks. Let me explain something to you. Now, anyone out there is highly accomplished, highly educated, then I hope so, because then you'll understand where I'm coming from. Okay, I think I'm pretty accomplished, and I'm highly educated. I'm as capable as anybody in the world. I know that, and I know this: there's nobody in the world who is so much better, works so much harder, is so much luckier, right, than everyone else, that justifies mega fortunes. Those people don't exist. They're getting those fortunes unfairly. Okay, are there people that are more competent, more talented than others? Of course there are, no doubt about it. Okay, but I don't believe there should be people with billions and billions of dollars. Now, of course, the critics are going to call me communist for that. Remember, I've only worked in Wall Street and venture capital. Just so happens I'm also a world-class analyst. I have an understanding of all these things. I have a science background as well, right? And I'm telling you, I know how capital is formed and how, studying these things, I know how people acquire things. They do so through unfair means, fraud, right? Government tax subsidies. My point is this: all these people. Now, there's different cases. People inherit money, so on and so forth. But you can just take a look at Elon Musk is a great example. Okay, you tell me, we're not even going to talk about his, what I believe are illegal activities, illegal statements made on Twitter to boost the price of his stock. We're not even going to talk about other things he's done to artificially manipulate the price of his stock. And that's why he bought Twitter, by the way, right? He got Twitter for free. He got Twitter for absolutely free based upon the false statements he has made about FSD and other things on Tesla. He pumped the price of that stock so much that his $50-some billion acquisition of Twitter was fucking free, by the way. Why isn't he facing prison time like the guy from Nikola, right? Ask yourself that question. How many people have been killed because of his FSD bullshit? And you might recall, of course, Lex Fridman, the fake engineer, the fake MIT scientist, the fake MIT lecturer, the guy who got his degree from Drexel University, the fucking school that if I was going to, I'd be embarrassed. He promoted this FSD bullshit, Friedman did, came out, wrote some papers that were not peer-reviewed, published them as if they were fucking legit. He did that to get in good graces with Elon Musk. Lex Fridman is involved in this stock manipulation as far as I'm concerned. And He's probably a Mossad operative, just like Ben Shapiro, FYI. So ask yourself how much money, once again, we're not even going to talk about stock manipulation through Musk. We're just talking about government subsidies, right? That's, if you're an American, that's your tax money. Think about that. Elon Musk was basically giving indirectly money to his customers that would buy his cars from taxpayers. And each car he sold enabled him to more closely reach the goals that he needed to get all this compensation. He achieved those goals largely through government funds, taxpayer money. Should he receive all this compensation? I guess he should, since, Pfizer and Merck and Amgen obtained most of their revenues from university-sponsored research, which was funded by taxpayers. I guess so, since Walmart and Home Depot, many of their employees, in some cases, in some cities, most of their employees are on welfare because they don't pay them enough money. So taxpayers subsidize their wages. You get what I'm talking about, folks? This is capitalism. This is our current system of capitalism. Tell me how that's right. You understand? In my opinion, if I were running the show, tell you what, I think $999 million for one person is plenty. Don't you? I mean, don't you think that's more than enough money? $999 million? What do you think? I think that's fucking plenty. Okay? That would be the extreme limit that anyone could ever earn. That would be what Elon Musk would be worth right now. $999 million. I want him to tell me that that's not enough money. I want him to say it in public. You understand what I'm saying? He has control over tens of billions, hundreds of billions of dollars that's not his. You understand? And it's not just him. I use him as an example that most people can or should be able to relate to. I gave the example of Walmart and Home Depot. How do I know this? Folks, I went out and talked to employees in these companies in Home Depot and Walmart. Okay, 15, 16 years ago, 17 years ago, I would go out and I would start talking to employees. So I understand. Many of these employees were working, they were on welfare because they weren't making enough money. Think about it. These are mega giant companies that don't want to pay their employees enough to live by, so they qualify for welfare. Think about that. Taxpayers are subsidizing the profits of publicly traded companies. This is what we're talking about. This is all fact, by the way. Apparently, you didn't see the video I made with Trump and Musk. You should look at it. I made a video basically said Musk played Trump. He completely played him. Okay. He got Trump to ask him to be, on his committee. Why? Because obviously think about it. Why do you think Elon Musk is now, he's a Trump, he converts to Trump. He wasn't a Trump supporter before, remember that? But guess what? Trump already won. He's got this big fan base, right? There's a good chance he's going to win. But guess what? Trump doesn't support the green machine, right? Trump isn't going to provide all these EV credits, is he? But Elon Musk, he's on his little advisory committee now. Of course he's going to get the money. It's all planned. You see. It's all fucking planned. Yeah, supported secretly. Yeah. But why is he coming out now? You got it? Why is he coming out now? Because it's the risk of Trump winning. And his company's in fucking trouble. His company's been doing shit. You got it? Think about when Elon Musk did an about face. When did he do an about face? Elon Musk he only recently came out in full support of Trump, maybe within the past year, right? I mean, isn't that pretty much correct? Around that time, take a look and see when Tesla's been in trouble. You see? He's playing the fucking game. Just like he played the liberal game before. You see? He's coming out now. I mean, think about it. People are saying, oh my God, Elon, I can't believe, you support climate, you should be liberal. I said this a long time ago. Elon he knows climate change. Let's say the exact claims about climate change are not true. Is the climate changing? Of course it's changing. Is there imminent danger to life on Earth? Of course not. He knows that. Just like Warren Buffett knows that. Which is why when asked if Buffett planned through Geico to add more funds to account for climate change, he said no. No, it's what he said. He knows. He's not going to push it. He's not going to say anything else. He's just going to answer it. No. You see? So that's the deal, okay? I think that's why he's coming out for Trump. It's because he wants that EV money. That's why he's got his fortune. You see? And even now he's probably so deep into this whole narrative. I mean, think about it. He probably does believe all the narratives behind man-made climate change, which of course we know was called global warming before, and they had to change it because how can you deny that the climate's not changing, right? It's irrefutable. But global warming was not happening before, so they had to change it to fit their narrative. I think he probably believes all that now because think about it. Your whole life is defined based upon this narrative, your company, everything. You have to believe it, or else you look in the mirror and you see nothing but an absolute fraud and piece of garbage. So I think it's a self-defense mechanism subconsciously. He probably knows, but consciously he believes it all. He's been forced to believe it. You see? That's what we're talking about, folks. Okay? That's why I say early in this video when I showed you guys, I talked about the climate change activists, and I thought it was funny. They're doing the right thing. They're vandalizing the mega wealthy's property. But they're doing it for the wrong reason. They're doing it because the mega wealthy, they consume so much more fossil fuels than everyone else with their consumption. They should be doing it because it's a huge inequity. It's responsible for the growing wealth and income disparity, which I wrote about in detail 17 years ago. You can imagine, how bad it is now. I mean, it takes some insight to see it 17 years ago, right? Nobody was talking about it back then. So wouldn't I be considered one of the authorities, certainly one of the top authorities, if I'm writing about it way back then before the financial crisis? The financial crisis was a huge turning point, right, that we have not kind of come back from, just like the dot-com bubble. I mean, I wrote about how, we never really recovered from the dot-com bubble. That's one reason why we had the financial crisis. I don't know if anyone else has mentioned that, but that's a fact. I know that because I lived it. I saw it. I was working on Wall Street, and I saw everything that happened. right? I mean, that's how I knew the economy was fiction. It was completely horseshit. They created the real estate bubble as the only means to replace the jobs. And that's why Greenspan smashed the rates down, to fuel that real estate market, because there were so many lost jobs, you see. And that's what ultimately led to the real estate bubble. And of course, we had, and then Wall Street got involved, and, securitizing the mortgages and the derivatives. It just, continued to snowball, you see. So, and of course, you don't hear anything about the EV cars. The batteries are not only are you potentially driving in a car that could potentially blow up and catch on fire, that the fire won't go out, right? But the batteries, how are you going to dispose of them? You see? And of course, the most important thing that I've been talking about now for about, gosh, I brought this up for close to 10 years, is the following. Probably 7, 8 years, is this. Somebody please explain to me how electric vehicles are lowering carbon emissions. Last time I checked, I did not notice any solar fucking panels on a Tesla. I mean, how come nobody's brought this up? Think about it. Right? That electricity to charge those batteries, guess where it comes from? It's not coming from solar panels. Right? It's coming from combustion of fossil fuels. I mean, this overwhelmingly obvious fact is another example of how so many people are just fucking under mind control. They don't even see the obvious. Same thing with the healthcare system in America. So many obvious things. They don't even fucking see it. It's just amazing to me. But in my opinion, and I think, look, who can argue? Who's going to tell me that $999 million is not enough money? I think I'm being quite generous. Okay? I think I'm being quite fucking generous. That would be the cap on wealth. Now, you're going to hear some money worshipers, typically the libertarian people. Like, I've heard this argument from Peter Schiff about keeping taxes low. He's going to tell you, no, you can't raise taxes on the wealthy, because then it's not going to incentivize people to work harder and create businesses and productivity. No, Peter, everyone's not a fucking money worshiper like you. Peter, some people actually want to achieve. They like to do things as an accomplishment, maybe even to benefit society. Peter, see, people like that, he's completely out of touch. This guy's completely fucking out of touch with reality. He's so greedy and such a pathological money worshiper. He doesn't even understand how normal people think and behave. Not everyone does everything for their lust of money. There's some people who actually would like to, and it's also an ego thing. I mean, why do you think a lot of people are in science? Why do you think a lot of these people are in hard sciences? It's ego. They're not going to get paid a lot of money, right? But it's kind of an ego thing. So people aren't going to stop working hard and trying to innovate and achieve because they're being taxed more. That's fucking nonsense. Certain people, yeah, if they're pathological money worshippers, that's fine. We don't need them anyway. Okay? They're part of the problem. You see? But that's what I would say. I'd put a major cap on the wealthy. Major cap. That's what I would do. Of course, that would only work if it was global, right? If it was a global law. That's what I do. And that would free up resources for people who are deserving. Think about that for a second. You have tax dollars going to big corporations, essentially, Right? Corporations that don't pay their employees enough, employees got to go on welfare. That welfare comes from tax dollars. Why? Well, the companies don't want to pay so they can boost their earnings, to boost their share price. And they boost their share price, and the executives get more stock options. You understand? You see? The stock market has absolutely, write this down, the stock market has absolutely destroyed capitalism in America. No doubt. Capitalism has been in a crisis for several years, and the stock market has absolutely destroyed capitalism. It's fact. Absolutely. 30 years ago, 40 years ago, you all know that you could go to a meeting, these shareholder meetings they would have, probably as, I would say 35 years ago, let's say, even 30 years ago. You could, and I don't know from experience, I'm not that old. I just know because I talk to people, talking to people, you learn a lot. You'd be surprised how much you learn talking to strangers, security guard, janitor, whomever. I was at a shareholder meeting. I was at Exxon shareholder meeting back in 2008, I think it was. Yeah, 2008, Dallas. There's protests going on, of course, because oil was at record highs. And I was talking to one of the security guys. And by the way, there was undercover people following, monitoring people that were protesting. It's pretty bizarre. But I was talking to one of the security guys inside in the building. He'd been doing it for a long time, and he told me, you know what? He goes, he says, things have changed because several years ago you could go to these shareholder meetings, you would see when shareholders were pissed off, they would throw shit at the CEO on stage. They'd throw fucking eggs, or they'd throw pies and shit. And I'm like, wow. And of course, think about 2008 when that was, right? That was just a few years after, the war on terror, right? Everything changed, right? In other words, definitions of things change, anybody could be called a terrorist, right? I mean, think about if you did that today. Dude, you'd be in jail. Think about if you went to a shareholder meeting and some loser destroyed a company through his incompetence, right? Let's say Dan Schulman, ex-CEO of PayPal, and you threw a fucking pie in his face. Tell me you wouldn't be facing probably 3 to 5 years in prison. Tell me, I'm talking about the U.S., right? These guys are treated like fucking royalty. You understand? In fact, you might want to check on ScamTube. I'm pretty sure you can find the video of Bill Gates and someone they throw a pie in his face. He's getting ready to go inside somewhere. You can find it, I'm sure, right now. Go look for it. It's pretty funny. And also, I think, I want to say Steve Ballmer. Steve Ballmer? I think so. He's talking. Someone throws something at him. Yeah, someone throws somebody in some European, some Eastern European country. Some guy with some strong accent. He throws some shoes at him or something. He's like, Microsoft stole. They're stealing from us. It's pretty funny. It's funny, but, it's you want to see more of that. But, of course, you do that today, dude, you're going to jail. You're going to fucking prison, right? So that's what I would do, folks. That's really, it's kind of like America's healthcare. You can't fix it. You have to dismantle it. You have to completely dismantle it and create universal healthcare. That's the only way to fix it. That's the only way. Okay? You can't think you're going to fix this and that. And no. You have to completely dismantle it. Just like the wealth and income disparity. You can't just okay, well, we're going to raise a minimum wage and we're going to give you more welfare. No, it doesn't work. If you want to really fix it, you put a cap on these mega wealthy crooks. And that's what they are. They're stealing assets, money, labor from taxpayers. And they're doing it most of the time legally, right? Once again, Elon Musk, great example, right? A lot of these corporations, not to mention, by the way, how about all these corporations outsourcing overseas to sweatshops, including people that are imprisoned to do work? You do know, of course, China has prisons that are factories, right? You all do know that. I'm not saying all of them, but this is known that there are some prison facilities where they have people, make certain things. So, think about that. Once again, folks, the stock market has destroyed capitalism. No doubt about it. No doubt about it. No doubt. That's my view. Okay, I'm going to close this out. Any? I'll take some related questions. Related questions. Any related questions? Folks, this is the stuff you need to be sending out there. Okay, not to some clowns that I've exposed. I mean, they can go fuck themselves. That's all a drama. You send this stuff to the people that claim to be telling the truth and for the people, and ask them why they're not talking to me. Remember, I'm not just mouthing off. I wrote about this stuff 17 years ago. It's a long time to see this stuff, right? Things were not nearly as bad as they are today. I can guarantee you that.